Hi, it's George Nordhaus, and continuing with our month on niche market, target marketing, we have the authority on compensation. I call him that. He's probably so embarrassed he wouldn't say it, but I call him that. We're going to be talking about producer goal setting and tiered compensation for agencies that niche market, or they target market. There's a little bit different way to pay producers than perhaps just a normal non-niche marketed type of agency. Our presenter today, our interviewee, is Al Diamond. And here's Al's picture now. He is been in the business for 30-some-odd years. I've been working with him for, I think, all 30 of those years. Consultant. He has a nice firm down in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And he's very well known, particularly in the East, as a consultant who comes into your agency and really does some things for you. And the people he has working for him are very, very reputable, etc. I can't say too many good things. Maybe I better stop, Al, and leave it alone. I will say one thing. If you're an IMMS member, you've read The Pipeline. Al, that's Al's agency management newsletter every month, which is terrific. Anyhow, Al, there's your background. Let's talk about niche marketing a bit, and how do you pay the people who sell the products?
Well, thank you, George. The only exception I have to make is I've been spending so much time out on the West Coast recently. Probably half my time is spent
I didn't know that.
San Diego and Washington.
Oh.
But
good.
We're all over the country.
You're expanding. Come to Santa Fe sometime.
I sure will.
All right, let's talk about it.
First of all, if you're a niche marketer, you're not alone. Niche marketing may represent a specialty in your agency, but what we've noticed is that most niche markets are no longer occupied by the one specialist. You have competition, and if you don't, you're very lucky. Enjoy it, because you will have competition soon.
Very few that don't have competition. I know a few of them that don't, but very few. I always think of Gladfelter over your way and on volunteer fire departments. But,
and I think he has plenty of competition.
Oh, he has plenty of competition now, but for a while he had it locked. But, everybody's going to come after that. But go ahead.
In niche marketing, you still, when you used to have the territory to yourself, you were very lucky and could go in and do your job. Now you still need a competitive advantage, just like any other agency needs a competitive advantage. And one of the things that it has historically been a competitive advantage has been rates. But truly, having lower rates on a consistent basis isn't likely anymore. Rates you'll have, sometimes you'll be at the low end of the market, sometimes you're above the low end. That shouldn't really defeat you as a niche marketer. You could have better coverage, and I've seen a lot of good marketing people, very technically competent, who know their products much better than anyone else. But it only works if you design the program yourself. And then, when you have better coverage, that window of opportunity is only open for a short time when the copycats come in and take it as well. So what we found is that most niche marketers, like other agencies, the added value of your agency defines whether you have a competitive advantage over your competitors.
That's really pretty true, whether you're a niche marketer or not. This is really a good slide. This is the three very most important things running an agency.
And the question then is, what's added value? Well, added value is truly defined by the strength of a relationship between the agent and the client. When you're a niche marketer, if you're not locally niche marketing, if you're not just in Los Angeles, Chicago, Omaha, Philadelphia, New York, what have you, if you have geographic territories that define your relationship, you have to work a lot harder than those local agents do to maintain a relationship. You need to provide services that your competitors can't or won't provide. That defines the added value. Added value is not processing transactions. We're not talking about applications and quoting and endorsements and cancellations and reinstatements. For the most part, your clients expect that. It's not unusual. They feel unsatisfied if you don't provide them, but they don't feel particularly thrilled just because you do.
This is the perfect primer of selling insurance at. Al, I'm going to tell the world, keep going.
Okay.
Exactly what you're saying is just reaching me. So,
well, the added value in the case of agencies is where you care more for the well-being of your client than for the sale of insurance. Remember, the client doesn't picture you as particularly caring about their well-being. They consider you a salesman of insurance products until you prove otherwise. But when you do prove that otherwise, you certainly are providing an added value to that client base.
right.
Now, caring for the client more than for the sale is defined within the asset protection model of relationship building. For those of you who are acquainted with the agency consulting group, we've defined the asset protection model. It's a relationship selling model where we train producers and agencies on how not to sell insurance and make a lot more money and convert a lot more clients by doing it. And we do it through TCOR, which is a fairly well-known name now. It's the total cost of risk that completely avoids quoting insurance. We analyze assets. We don't quote insurance. And that means when you come into a niche market, like most of you who are listening to this are, and even if you don't, even if you're not niche marketers, this is particularly valuable. You're analyzing a particular part of their asset base, certainly not their entire asset base. If you want to form a long relationship with that client, that niche market that you're going after, once you get it, it becomes the jumping off point for your client relationship, not the end point. If you're caring more for the client than for the sale, you're consulting on their needs. You're not just quoting insurance. And if you notice, the redundancy here is avoiding the quoting process. If you go into the quoting process, then you're just like anyone else who's dealing with that client for the last 20 or 30 years. Instead of quoting insurance, what we do is we adopt the servant mentality. We say, let's find out what the needs are, and if those needs don't include our coverage, we at least tell them that. And if they do, we'll tell them that as well, and let them be the decision makers. No pressure, no pushing.
You know, I think, Al, as you go into that next slide, that point, don't quote insurance, is the hardest thing to get across to agents. It's the hardest point over these years. I've tried to do that. Of course, it's easy for me to say don't quote it. It's easy for the agency to quote it. But your point is very well taken.
George, we're finding a hit rate among agencies for the asset protection model of about 5%. 95% of the agents in the United States cannot possibly convert from their quote model, quote and sell price model,
good point,
to a relationship selling model.
Why can't they?
Because their culture isn't attuned to it. The owners and participants in the agency have been indoctrinated by decades where they do nothing but quote and requote, losing customers this year, gaining them back next year for a $500 difference in price, and losing them again. The agents who have adopted the relationship selling model are so successful that when we train the asset protection model, we actually bring agents into the room, people with $1 million and $2 million and $3 million books of business. By the way, that's commission, not premium, who have never sold a policy. And they have been doing this for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, so they've transcended the soft and hard markets. And what they've done is they've said everyone else in the industry is selling price and is quoting, and even though they say they sell service, they really have nothing to sell but price. Well, we're going to do something completely different. They've made the total commitment to this, not just a modest change, but a total commitment in the agency, and it works. And they're not going to advertise this because they're happy as larks growing 20, 30, 40% per year with 20, 30, and 40% bottom line profits to boot. The common theme that we talk about here is stop quoting insurance, and instead of quoting, to make sense out of what you're doing for a living. I was just speaking to an agent 15 minutes before this phone call, and we were talking about the asset protection model, and I went on his website, and the entire theme of his website is get free quotes here.
Yeah.
Do you really get paid to quote insurance? You know that if you don't know the client, that he's going to give his incumbent a last look. Are you really interested in getting customers if the only thing that you have to sell is price? And what if the incumbent carrier is the best one available? Do you really want to sell away from what's best for your client? And the answer is no, you don't. If you quote right out of the box, won't the client give his incumbent a last chance? I mean, this is an agent that he's known for years.
Right, I would. You would.
So, of course. What does he know about you? So what we do is we talk about T-Core instead of premiums. We talk about the cost of risk of the clients, where premium is only one part of the cost of risk. And we have deductibles and self-insurance plans, risk management costs, workers' comp analysis, potentially reductions in it, EPL exposures, and then we talk about the real killers, the things that some are insurable, like business interruption, and others are not, like the Family Medical Leave Act. Most customers don't realize the kind of financial exposure to which they've subjected themselves by not paying attention to the federal regulatory acts that impact them on a daily basis. They won't know it now, but they will if they do it wrong and someone sues them and gets millions of dollars from them, or the feds come in and do an audit and fine them $50,000 or $100,000. Their $25,000 or $30,000 premium won't look so hot anymore.
Well, you know what? I love this slide. The iceberg, on the tip of the iceberg, and everything that shows and what really doesn't show down there. This is a beautiful slide.
Premium is only a small part. It may be significant because it's cash out of pocket, but it's only a small part of the assets that are at risk for most customers that they don't realize are at risk.
All right, let's shift gears. Let's go to the producer. Now, How about the producer? Is his role or her role different in a target marketed niche marketing organization?
Absolutely. The producer's role should be to build relationships on behalf of the agency. You notice it doesn't say to sell insurance, because if you build the relationships, the insurance products will come. The producer's role is to provide and prove value to prospects before the client adopts you. Now, that's hard enough to do if you're right in the same town as your client all the time. If you're a niche marketer, especially if you're regional and national in scope, how do you provide that proof and that value before the client assumes that you are going to be his agent when his agent is 5 minutes away and you're 5,000 miles away?
Mm-hmm. Good point.
The other part of the producer's role is to continue to provide value until that client realizes that they need you to be their agent. When this is done and done properly, the insurance part of this is just an afterthought. And yes, it pays our way because we are primarily in the insurance business, but the total cost of risk and the asset risk to the client goes beyond insurance, and we have to as well.
All right,
that's the producer's primary role within this entire organization.
Right. That's what I was going to ask for, defining the role.
Right. The end result of that role is that the agent will get more clients, not less, and the agency becomes the supplier of all the client's insurance needs. And when I say all, I know that a lot of niche marketers have tried to specialize, and now we're swinging back in the other direction. I've never been in favor of total specialization because the customers need more insurance products than the single niche market or program that we have available. And we need to have those insurance products available to them. Your group, the Group 500, the IMMS, is a perfect example of how you can market together and afford so many more products and services than any single agent can on his own. And if they use your services properly, there's a prime example of how to do a lot more for the client than just the program needs.
Well, I think that your point here is well taken. It's very, and we could spend a lot of time on it, on the other products and everything else. But a real niche marketing firm does have a liability to the extent that they can't handle the employee benefits there, et cetera, they're in trouble there. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration here.
And we need conglomerative operations that can help them provide the product needs that the local agent, by the way, uses to point out your weaknesses. When they say, we can give you your homeowners and auto coverage, we can give you your health insurance, we can do your EPL, what can these guys do? Yeah. And we have to provide more services rather than less. Now, how to achieve the end result is for the producer to have an activity funnel that's filled with growing client relationships. You notice I'm not concentrating on sales. I'm concentrating on the number of relationships that they're building. If you're in a niche market where you can afford to actually be on site with the prospect, that producer goes on site as close to 100% of his time as he can. If not, if you're in a niche market where your contacts are primarily by phone, email, letter, you have to be in contact with those folks much more often than their current agent does. Mm-hmm. That means that you set a large number of productive sales calls. Now, the sales calls are typically defined as producer goals. Personal calls on site with decision makers. Now, on site, if you can do it locally or if in your niche, in your program, you are traveling to where your prospects are, but at least constant contact with the decision makers where you're not. Producer goals are providing added value on behalf of the agency are included in the producer goals. That means we analyze all risks, not just the insurable risks. Now, you may ask, how do you analyze risks that aren't insurable? And then we get back to the newer issues, auditing for federal regulations, things that involve the employer, and that we know the employer is doing wrong unless they have a professional staff in human relations, and we can identify what those are. We can provide advice that diminishes the risk to the client's assets. If they're insurable, we provide the insurance answers. We don't care where he gets those answers. We just provide them. If they're not insurable, then we find the responses that will lower the risk to his assets. What we're saying for producers are consult, but don't quote on clients' insurance products. As soon as you mention to a new prospect that you want to quote their insurance, you become just another insurance salesman.
Amen.
Until then, while you're a consultant instead, and you say to him, look, we're not here to sell you insurance. We hope to become your insurance agent, but we need to earn our way into that. As long as you're in that mode and he doesn't think you're trying to sell him a product or service, he's going to put more and more trust in you until you have that relationship fixed. Validation. What we're always asked when we do compensation issues is for validation schedules that always seem to relate back to premium or commissions or number of sales. Well, what we do is we base our goals on the number of sales goals and those should be sales calls needed to support the expected compensation. Now, we have a producer goal-setting formula that I don't want to bore you with, and it would take too long to get into. But any of our listeners that either get this now live or get it at any time in the future out of the archives of IMMS is invited to call us toll-free, and we'll just send you the producer goal-setting formula, or we'll email it to you in its Excel format so you can use it for your producers, whether you use our program or not.
Very nice of you, Al. Thank you.
That's my
pleasure. You always do the benchmarking, too, and there's no cost to that for agents. That's a whole other story, but we'll get on that later.
That's a different subject.
Different
but for the goal-setting formulas, it's a good thing to have, even if you're sales-oriented, because it will tell you literally down to how many sales calls need to be done by your producer on a weekly or monthly or annual basis in order to support their compensation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the agency's job and the producer's job are different. The agency should direct and manage the producer to success. Never turn a producer loose and expect him to go off on his own, no matter how self-supporting he is. Every producer can use coaching and counseling and management to one degree or another. However, the agency cannot do one thing. They cannot motivate the producer to do the right things often enough. You can teach the producer technically the products, the services, how to approach clients, all the sales methodologies you want, but you can't motivate them to get out of bed in the morning and actually do it.
Well, you can
go ahead.
Kick them in the. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can if you want to get sued.
Oh, that's all right. All right, now let's switch to a producer compensation.
Right. We do self-monitoring, and we do a self-terminating producer agreement.
What do you mean self-monitoring?
Well, what we do is we do compensation programs for producers that as long as they produce, they achieve their sales call goals with the appropriate supporting reports on a monthly basis. Their compensation is assured during the year.
Got it.
The reason we do that is our sales goal formulas says that if we have a producer who needs $100,000 a year, and we know he has a renewal stream that's going to pay part of that, we can define how much new business he has to write, and from that, how many sales calls are needed in order to generate that new business over time. We know that if he can motivate himself to do the right number of sales calls, and we're managing and monitoring that, and he does a sales call report at the end of every sales call so that we know he's actually doing them, that the results will fall in place. And this has worked over and over and over again. When they don't do their sales calls, they don't get their results. It's not a surprise to us, but it seems to be for many agents. If, however, they don't do their sales calls in 2 consecutive months, they get a reduction in their compensation by 10%.
You're not saying sales, you're saying sales calls.
I'm talking about sales calls. The number of visits, the number of calls they make. If you're a niche marketer that has a countrywide presence, you're probably not getting into an airplane and visiting prospects on a daily basis. I hope you are. If you are, you're going to have more sales, but it'll be more expensive. But if not, then literally the calls to the decision makers with a sales call report thereafter to the sales manager will define whether you are actually achieving your sales calls. Get a reduction in compensation by 10% in the next month. Now, that compensation can be regained. We're not trying to penalize the producer. All we're saying is we know that if you make X number of sales calls a month, you will eventually get the kind of results that we're expecting. If you don't, we know that you won't, and we're not going to put agency assets at risk. So we'll lower your draw or your salary or your commission that you're getting until you regain your missing sales calls. If you don't, if you're still not motivated to do the number of sales calls, then it will eventually force them out of your agency because their compensation will go down just about every month.
Which is a good thing for everybody. I mean, to force them out.
Well, it is, because if a producer isn't going to motivate himself to do the right thing, to be successful in your agency, shouldn't he be doing something else? If you continue to pay him at the level that he can be comfortable, he's never going to do the right thing and leave. And most agents wait way too long to pull the trigger. They're not bad guys. They like to be white hats. So the self-terminating producer contract takes care of that for you. It says if you don't do the right thing, you know that you're going to get a reduction, and we produce a report to you every month that says you're in danger, or you're getting a reduction, or you're back in safe mode. Now, we combine that compensation program with the tiered compensation program for the successful producer, because if there's a downside for being unsuccessful, there ought to be an upside for being extremely successful. For instance, the larger a book of business that a producer generates, we know that that producer is more profitable to the agency than producers who have small books of business. So we define a producer compensation by agency budget and spending habits. Every agency has a percentage of revenue that it can afford to pay producers, but they're not all 30% or 35 or 40%. It depends on how the agency's budget is structured. The nationwide average happens to be 33% of the commission dollar, but it's not necessarily always the same.
New and renewal, or just new?
No, it's 33% overall.
Overall.
Right. Whether that's on a salary, a draw, whether it's straight or split commissions. The split commissions are no longer being offered new and renewal. I think most agents have understood that what's happening is that they're paying a much higher commission on new business, losing it the next year, and then they're repaying that high percentage on the next piece of new business that comes in. So the split commission is converting to base and growth. That says once you grow, you have to complete that level of performance before you break into a higher commission in the next year.
Great.
So we use the specific agency financials to identify the commission volume at which profits are high enough to sponsor higher producer commissions. And then we give them those higher commissions. For instance, we recommend at least 3 tiers. Some agents who have done this have 10 tiers of compensation. But in our example, they're the 3 most popular tiers: 30% commission, 35%, and 40% overall.
You're talking about now the 200, 400, and 400,000 is commission income.
Gross commission income,
renewable, on the whole book.
Renewable commission income.
Right.
So if you are writing things that are just one-time hits, you will certainly get paid for it this year, but you won't get a higher tier next year because it's not renewable commission. So a producer, the way it works is that if you have achieved $200,000 or more of commission this year, and by the way, those numbers are just thrown in for example's sake. When we go into an agency, we actually plug in the right numbers for the kind of business that agency operates. So in some cases, the first tier is at $150,000 of commission. In some agencies, it's $500,000 where they're writing nothing but large accounts. Increasing the producer's compensation from the first dollar instead of from subsequent dollars provides the greatest incentive. So if during the course of the year you exceed that $200,000, suddenly instead of 30%, you're getting paid 35% from the first dollar. That's a big raise.
Ooh, nice.
When you go from $400,000, from the $399,000 mark above 400 in this particular scenario, you get 40% commission, not for subsequent dollars, but from the first dollar that you produce that year.
So you're getting another, in this case, 5% more than you would have, or another $20,000 bonus.
And these producers are reaching for the sky. When they get anywhere close to their tiers, they're pulling hard to get that next commission dollar in the door so that they can break another 5%.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a different compensation arrangement for new producers. The tiered compensation works well for existing producers. They have books of business. They're growing. But it doesn't work well when you're talking about a brand new producer coming into the business. You've trained him into your program. You've trained him into your niche. Now you put him on the road or on the phone or in the process of going out and generating business. You have to meet their subsistence needs in order to allow them to deal with your customers and build relationships without excessive pressure on them. Subsistence needs means we're going to make sure they can pay their bills during the year. Housing, food, your kids aren't going to go without clothes. However, we're not talking about them putting additional money into savings. I'm not concerned that they made $50,000 last year in whatever business they happen to be in. What I'm concerned with is how much does it cost them to pay their bills.
Strictly subsistence.
If it costs them $40,000 to pay their bills and they put $10,000 into savings, I don't want to pay them $50,000 of agency money this year while they're learning the trade so that they can put my money in their savings account without earning it. So we validate the compensation, again, based on the sales call requirement, with the expectation that in the first year, the producer will generate one time his earnings, straight salary, whatever he's getting, he's got to produce. In the second year, twice that. In the third year, 3 times that. And then he converts to the commission schedule that's involved in the tiered compensation. And what that does is it says if you have a young man who doesn't need more than $25,000 or $30,000 to get by, he has a lower expectation in the first year and has an easier time getting to it and breaking through into a bonus scenario than if you buy somebody from another industry and he has a family of 4 and he needs $50,000 or $60,000 just to pay his bills. He's going to have to step up to bat because we can't take more than 3 years to get back to break even. This program of 1 time, 2 time, and 3 times will allow the agency to make money on the producer by the end of the third year.
Good.
First year, he may be bringing revenue in to support his cash needs, but you're far from profitable with that producer. Second year, you make it up. Third year, you make money.
That's general rule anyway. It takes about 3 years for a producer to really make money.
Well, I can't give you general rules. General rules are always broken, but that's what it appears to be for the normal producers. And what we do to support them and to give them additional incentives is we pay them a bonus for exceeding those yearly goals during their 3-year validation. So if he does better than 1 time the first year, he's going to get a bonus. If he does better than 2 times the second or 3 times the third, he'll get a bonus there as well.
Beautiful. Well, Al, you've given us a great overview here of producer compensation for, producer compensation in general, not necessarily just for a niche-oriented agency, but producers' compensation in general is, I think that this is one of those programs that people will listen to again and again.
Well, what I would love them to do is listen to it, call me with any questions that they have. We'll provide our value to them before they hire us as consultants, but we expect in a fair number of cases that they'll realize that we can help them design these programs. They provide the talent, they provide the skills, we'll provide the infrastructure, and yes, it certainly works in non-niche marketing agencies, but we found that this is a really valuable asset and the way to motivate producers in a niche marketing agency to build relationships that will last much longer than program business has had a tendency to last in the past. We've always had a problem with program business, and as you know, we have a lot of clients in niche markets and programs that their clients, at least outside of their immediate control, can get wooed away by other programs or by other agents as the market changes. Well, we can cement that relationship so that they have a much longer relationship with their customers.
Terrific. And let me remind everyone that you can call that number there if you're an IMMS or a Group 500 member, and Al will send you the producer goal-setting formula, which is very nice of him. One of these days we'll talk about benchmarking a little bit more because Al has well over 3,000 agency numbers in his database. One of the biggest in any time. But that's a whole other story. Al, thank you very much for sharing with us. You always come through.
It's my pleasure, George, anytime.